Hello and thank you for tuning in. I'm Johnny Ray.
And I'm Allie Havens. In local news tonight, Logan Henry, formerly of Keene, pled guilty to theft Tuesday after he admitted to setting up a website that he used to falsely raise money for cancer treatments.
Mr. Henry raised almost $3,800 from various sources and admitted to police that he lied and would pay full restitution. The court sentenced him to 360 days in jail, suspended pending good behavior and full restitution with a $500 fine and court costs.
Thursday night, 5 people vied for the vacant Ward 4 City Council seat. Ian Freeman, Margaret Lynch, Marcus McCarroll, Robert O'Connor, and Robert Sutherland filed to run for the seat.
Each candidate had an opportunity to address the council. We have a video of Ian Freeman's address to City Council.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try not to go past just a few minutes here, but let me know if I've got 1 minute left. I'd appreciate that. So the reason I'm running for City Council is that there are some problems with the City of Keene. It's a great place to live. It's a beautiful place. It's full of wonderful people. And there are only really a few issues with it. And one of those is the constant targeting of peaceful people in Keene. By the Keene Police Department. And of course I've expressed this to the council in appearances previous, but it seems to me that one thing that you all want to think about, whether I get chosen for this position or not, is what the purpose of government is. Is the purpose of government to control people, to tell them things they can and can't do that you don't like, or is the purpose of government to protect individual life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? And if it is to protect the pursuit of happiness, then there's no reason to be taking peaceful people off the streets and putting them in prison cells in the county jail if they haven't harmed anyone else. And I can tell you, having been to that county jail for a 2-month period, I had the opportunity to meet some of its denizens. And I don't know if any of you have ever actually been there to visit the actual people who are in the jail. It's one thing to take a tour of the jail itself, and it's a very well-run jail. It's in fact probably the best in the entire state, if not one of the best in the country. That's not my issue. The jail itself is not the issue. They do a good job there. But it's putting people in there who don't belong there. If you would take, and you can talk to Rick Van Wickler, who's the superintendent of that jail, if you were to take out of that jail all of the peaceful prisoners, you'd probably be able to shut the jail, like 3/4 of the jail down. I mean, you've got people in there for smoking cannabis. You've got them in there for driving. Note I didn't say driving drunk. Those people are there, but driving, people actually driving to work. There was a guy in my cell block who was in for an entire year because he was going to work. And really all it ended up being was like a paperwork snafu with the Department of Transportation from 22 years previous that he didn't get cleared up. He was going to work, he got pulled over by Keene Police and put in jail for a year of his life. He's got a family on the outside. I mean, he's not uncommon. There are a bunch of people like that in there, and nobody tells their story because everybody looks at the jail and they say, oh, well, that's the place where bad people go. But I can tell you that's not true. And as I say, the superintendent would also tell you that there are a bunch of people in that jail that really don't belong there. So I hope that one of the things that I would work toward if I were a city councilor would be to change the priorities for the Keene Police Department to actually investigate real crimes that have real victims. I think that's really important, and it would be something that would go a long way toward keeping the streets safer here in Keene if the police weren't spending their time on victimless crimes. Also, of course, property tax. As any of you know, if you own property in Keene, it's pretty outrageous here. I pay 4 times the property tax in New Hampshire that I did when I lived in Florida. Now, mind you, Florida has other taxes to kind of make up the difference, so it's understandable why New Hampshire's property taxes are higher than the average, but all that said, Keene is one of the highest in the state. And so obviously it can be done, governing can be done for less. And so hopefully there would be ways to look at changing that, because it seems to me that the property taxes in Keene are driving families out of Keene. If I were,
you have a minute to go.
Thank you very much. If I were a family looking at moving into Keene, I would choose one of the surrounding towns simply because it's just so much cheaper. You can get all the benefits of living near Keene, all of the stores and all the nice things that we have here, but why bother actually living in Keene because the taxes are crazy. Plus the zoning department as well, I think that needs to go away. At the very least, it should be changed to a system where it's complaint-based like it used to be. It's my understanding it's been changed to where zoning enforcers to just go around and harass people. And I know that they've been known to do that. I've talked to some of my neighbors, and they don't appreciate. Even one of the jail guards was telling me that she didn't appreciate the way zoning was handled in Keene. So those are three really important issues to me, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
In a predictable move, former Keene police officer Robert O'Connor was chosen for the seat.
In state news, an arrest was made in the Exeter Hospital hepatitis C outbreak. Federal police arrested David Kwiatkowski with obtaining controlled substances by fraud and tampering with a consumer product.
Kwiatkowski is a traveling medical technician and is believed to have infected over 30 people by injecting himself with the drug and then reusing the needles on patients at the cardiac catheterization lab.
Federal and state health officials are contacting other states where Kwiatkowski worked over the last 2 years.
In national news, 12 people were killed and 59 others injured at the midnight premiere of the latest Batman movie in Aurora, Colorado.
The gunman, 24-year-old James Holmes, was arrested in the parking lot behind the theater, where the police found 2 .40 caliber handguns, a high-powered rifle, and a shotgun. All the weapons and ammunition were obtained legally. The White House later announced no apparent nexus between the Colorado shooting and terrorism. President Obama also cut short his campaign swing in Florida.
So I guess this story was a really big deal. It was made, the headlines all over the country, and a lot of people were upset, and a lot of people are calling for more gun control laws because of the shooting in Aurora. Yep,
and we were talking about this before the show on the broader topic about why it's difficult for me to sort of hold forth on these topics, because I don't understand. Well, first of all, I disagree with people who think that we should have gun control laws or laws controlling people and how they own
what tools they can have.
Yeah,
because that's how I think of it, is just the guns are just a tool, and people think of them as offensive. Like the only kind of reason you'd use a gun is for offensive purposes, but a lot of people, I think most people buy guns for self-defense or for hunting or purposes that there's no aggression involved or intent for aggression, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that would like to use them for that. So that's why all the more important to be able to protect yourself, right?
Exactly. The guns are out there. Humankind moves forward in their technology, and these things go out there into the world. And if you try, you're just not going to be able to keep guns away from people, no matter how hard you try. I mean, they got drugs in prison. Mm-hmm. There's drugs in the jails.
They can't even keep
those people are under lock and key. They can't keep drugs out of jail. So how are you going to keep guns away from criminals? I don't think you're going to be able to do that. So the answer is to give people freedom to own them so that they can protect themselves.
Why do you think it's so important to allow people, most people would agree that yes, people need liberty when it comes to things like guns. It's too important and it's too scary to let people have that.
Well, you're not going to be able to, the laws we have, or any laws that anyone proposes to restrict people from owning guns, they're just not going to work.
Why?
Because the state has never had the power that they would like to have to control people.
Right. Well, there's a whole gun trade, drug trade, all these, when they, you can just prohibit something, but that only puts in the hands of criminals and people who are more likely to use them for aggressive purposes if you outlaw it. And then it makes people that wouldn't, law-abiding people who would normally be fine with having, you'd normally trust with something like a gun, those people aren't going to have them. And the people who you wouldn't trust with guns necessarily are going to have them because they don't care what the laws are.
Right. And there, earlier in the week, there was a story of the 71-year-old man who he was in the internet cafe. Some 2 or 3 armed robbers came in, and this 71 came in to rob the place and rob everybody in it. And this old man this mature man was armed, and he pulled out his weapon and drove them off.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you see that?
I didn't see that, but it's a good point that it's a good equalizer for, people who are not as strong physically, or, whatever it is that would, say you were able to take all the guns away from everyone, no more guns, just all of them are gone, and all the knowledge of how to make them.
Right.
Then we're just resorting to like our bare strength or whatever to
and the meatheads. The meatheads run the world then.
I don't think anyone wants that.
I would if I was a meathead, but unfortunately I'm not. Moving on, in international news, the U.S. government has awarded Rosoboron Export FGUP Moscow, Russia, with a $171 million contract for 10 Mi-17 helicopters.
The work on the helicopters will be performed in Russia with a completion date of year-end 2016.
Next, we have the latest trailer for Derrick J. Freeman's Victimless crime spree documentary.
Hi, I'm Derrick J. I'm an activist originally from Philadelphia. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict, or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
We certainly missed Derrick. He started his Year in Exile tour just last week. So
I didn't know that. Actually, I was with him before, and I remember hearing him say that he was leaving soon. So he's gone. Where is he now?
Well, I think he's going all over. I'm not exactly sure where he is right now, but I think that his plan was, as he described on the show, I think he addressed the listeners and just said that he's going to be, following the activism that's happening in other parts of the country and trying to document it wherever it's happening. So
right, because he has a suspended sentence. Is that right?
Yeah, he's got. He just basically needs to. That boy, he's gonna live free no matter what. He can't
live his life without running afoul of the nanny state, not the nanny state, the busybodies, the busybody bureaucrats.
Yep.
So he put himself self-imposed exile. He's going away for a year, and then he'll be back. But someone is making a documentary about his victimless. Bo Davis is making a documentary about his victimless crime spree.
Yep.
And what kind of crimes did he commit?
Victimless ones.
Right. It was mostly sort of a lot of peaceful, nonviolent.
A lot of it was stuff where he's out there making a point, making a statement. A lot of people, when they get busted by the cops or doing something, and they're having to be sneaky about it, or they're sort of trying to protect themselves so they don't get caught, and then when they do, it makes less of an impact, I think, than people that just openly do things that they know isn't creating any victims, and so they're acting unashamed. Not that there's anything wrong with trying to circumvent the law, but I think that he was acting in a way that was open for the purpose of taking a stance on it.
Mm-hmm. And he ran from the police on more than one occasion. I know we showed a video once of him sort of backpedaling, and he escaped that time, but then I think the next time or another time they got him.
Yeah, they were actually waiting out by his car the first time, or I think it was when he was standing outside of the court, and they said that he was banned from the court, and so they came after him for standing outside of it. And so I guess it freaked him out a little bit, and he starts to run away, and then they catch him by his car later, which is kind of scary. I don't like the idea of men standing by my car waiting for me so they can handcuff me and take me off somewhere.
Well, he just needs to, behave himself.
I guess so. We should all just behave ourselves, I guess, and
Pay-
anytime a law's passed, we should just go along with it.
Right, pay his taxes. Do it with a smile on your face, Derrick.
Well, a lot of these laws wouldn't pass if they were unpopular, and it's not that they are popular. I think that it's just people don't pay attention, and they're just more worried now with making sure that they're not breaking any laws, or which is inevitable. Everyone breaks laws on a daily basis. So things that you wouldn't even know are against the law, people do. So I think that the point is to sort of not just be like a purist in the way you act, and just do living free in the sense of just doing everything. Like, there's something to be said for choosing your battles, and if you're going to take a stand. I like the things that Derrick took a stand on. I happen to agree with him on a lot of these things. There are some things that I think they're like against the law that I don't necessarily like people doing, like shooting up heroin, but that doesn't mean that I think it should be illegal to, use hard drugs. I don't particularly like that, so I wouldn't, be out openly using heroin because that's not something I would do. But a lot of the things that he was doing are things that I would like to be able to do openly.
Yep. I wouldn't go out and pick a fight with a police officer. Number one, because I would get beat up, and number two, because I don't like aggressing or assaulting people. That ain't right.
Well, what do you think you would? You mean picking a fight with a police officer?
Yeah, like starting a fight, and I wouldn't.
Why would you do that anyway?
Because they steal my money.
Oh. Well, it's usually not them that necessarily come steal. It's usually like the IRS, or there's also that, like, I think a lot of people get kind of confused when it's said that taxation is theft, or I've actually heard someone say it's actually more like robbery than theft, because...
What's the difference?
I think that robbery is when you take something from someone and they're aware of it, whereas theft is where you take it when they're not aware.
Okay.
So when you get your paycheck, you can see exactly how you've been robbed, and you're kind of helpless to do anything about it. But unless you just don't file for your W-2s or whatever.
Yeah. Well, going back to the police, the police are special because I say bad things about government bureaucrats all the time, and the police are no exception. My dealings with them, they are in the overwhelming majority of cases where I'm dealing with a police officer, they're professional and friendly, and they wish me a good day. But the thing about the police is they're the guys they're the point of the spear. They're the ones who are actually doing the dirty work of taking your money. There's like when a police officer pulls you over, there's a couple of bureaucratic forms separating the money coming out of your pocket and the money going into their pocket.
Right.
When they're effective and they're bringing in a lot of money, then the state is giving them money.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think a lot of the problems with police, and I think it's becoming a trend, is that they're not encouraged to use their brains anymore. That, while there are cops out there that might be intelligent and good at dealing with situations and have some sort of knack for providing security, and that's their passion, they're sort of dumbing down the profession to the point where any monkey could do it. Not that they're all dumb, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is that there are certain jobs out there where you don't necessarily have to be very skilled at it, but providing protection and security for people is a skilled job. But they're trying to make it more of a you follow orders job and do what you're told. And when it comes to training, it seems like it's more about apprehending suspects and officer safety instead of, how to best deal with a situation in which no one gets harmed.
So do you think that the police are becoming more thuggish as time goes by?
I would say so.
Why do you think that is?
I think that it's because of just the way the state grows by necessity. Like, it always has to be growing because basically they do such a poor job at allocating resources that to retain the illusion of legitimacy, they have to just keep expanding, whatever the things that they control. So because the state grows, and the only real power the state has is to legislate and aggress and coerce, that the cops end up having a lot more things to do than they did maybe 20 years ago.
The government...
That's just my theory.
Government employment has been growing since 2008 and the big financial collapse. Is that right?
I'm not actually sure with what the employment with government, like what the numbers are for that, but it wouldn't really surprise me because I know that a lot of people who are going to college are actually going to, in order to get like a license or some kind of job working for government, because typically working for government is like a sure thing for a lot of people. They know that they're less likely to get fired or laid off, and they're not subjected to the market at all. So it's like once you have a job with the government, you're pretty much set. And I think that people go after those jobs because of that. It's like but that doesn't mean that it's good necessarily. Like, I would say that it doesn't, if say you get a job working for the government, but then you're not providing anything. Like, say I become a toll booth worker or something. I don't think I have to go to college for that, but hypothetically. And then the road doesn't need to collect money anymore, and they need to like lay off toll booth workers. Well, they can't because they're working for the government now, and there's unions for that. So then they're just going to have makeshift jobs for people to do. There was recently a video I was watching about how these unions were really open. It was like an inside, excuse me, there's like an inside sting they sort of did, these independent journalists, and they went in and they pitched this work program that was literally digging in holes and filling them back up
again.
And,
wow.
And these people whose job it is to lobby for these different little work programs and creating jobs were all for the idea. They're like, oh, it'll be easy. We know these guys will be on board with it, and it's just a matter of getting you the money. That's all we have to do, and then you can do whatever you want with it, even if it is just filling and digging up holes and filling them back in.
Yeah, it's Keynesianism, which is that's the classic example. I think Lord Keynes himself said that you could stimulate the economy just by paying people to dig holes and fill them back up again.
Well, it's labor theory of value, which is just that the value that objects or whatever services and goods are, their value is determined by how much labor that goes into them. But as we know, it doesn't. Unless someone values something like, oh, I like that this, took a lot of time to make. In general, it's just subjective how people value it. And so if you can make something more efficient and expedient for people, then that doesn't make it less valuable on the whole. Because if labor theory of value was true, then yes, it would be good for the economy just to give people money to dig up holes and fill them back in. I'm
going to challenge you on that because I'm not an economist, but I don't think the labor theory of value has anything to do with Keynesianism necessarily.
Well, that's what the hypothesis is for the labor theory of value, is that the value comes from how much labor went into to making something,
Okay.
to producing something.
Okay, yeah, and I would like to add that if I was pressed, I couldn't explain to you or anybody what the labor theory of value supposes. So that's what my opinion's worth on that.
That's okay, Johnny. I don't really necessarily know that I quite understand it either, but that's sort of the gist, is that I think that value is a subjective thing, and that you can't determine what gives something its value because there's too many factors involved, because there's too many people desiring certain things that you could never know why something's valued.
Right, right. Subjective, yeah. The things are valued at what someone else will pay for it, right?
There you go.
Yeah, and this digging holes and filling them back in, again, what I was going to say, that stuff just doesn't pass the smell test.
Right. Well,
with old Johnny Ray.
People aren't gonna pay for that consensually. That has to be coercive. Anything that, you have to always ask why people want more government programs, because, these things would, whatever service it is, it would exist if there wasn't, why do you need something why would you want something in the economy that requires coercion in order to provide it?
Mm-hmm.
Because if people really valued that, then it would
They'll
just
pay
come
for
about
it.
spontaneously, unless there's some government regulation keeping that from happening, which, it's always ambiguous as to why, we can't have certain things. Because, like hovercrafts and stuff. There's all this legislation involved with, transportation, making things like this.
You're pushing my buttons with that hovercraft stuff.
I know, I really want one, and I'm mad that I don't have one. I think I brought that up on the show before.
Well, you've done it again. You spent another 30 minutes with us.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Join us again next week for the next installment of ShireTV, and for more news and analysis. I'm Johnny Ray.
And I'm Allie Havens. May you each find happiness, peace, and prosperity.